In June of 1926, 17-year-old Marion Robb and his 14-year-old brother, Clark, were at their family land watching over their sheep. The area had a coyote problem, as well as sheep rustlers stealing sheep from flocks at that time, so the boys usually camped the entire summer to watch over their flock. Marion had seen a coyote on June 5th and went to track it on horseback, while Clark stayed at camp to prepare breakfast. Clark heard a single gunshot and figured that his brother found the coyote. After 2 hours had passed and Marion did not return, Clark went looking for him and eventually found Marion's horse, its pack saddle, and something strange. On the saddle horn, there was obvious blood. Clark called out for Marion, but received no answer, so Clark hopped on the horse and rode to a nearby ranch looking for help. When he arrived at the ranch, he was hysterical and suffering from shock. One of the ranchers went with Clark to the area where Marion last was, while another rancher alerted the town, the Robb family, and the authorities. Over 500 men searched for days and found two of Marion's bloody handkerchiefs, a torn and bloody piece of his underwear, as well as his gun and his pocket knife. They found areas on the ground which suggested he sat down to patch up his wounds with the handkerchiefs and underwear. It was theorized that Marion had accidentally shot himself because the gun he used was known to have a hair trigger, and people thought he was walking around somewhere in shock. During the search, when the lamb was found with its throat slit, people began to think that Marion killed the lamb to stage a hoax. Some of the found blood was sent to a lab in Salt Lake City, and when examined under a microscope, the lab called authorities in Paragona and told them that the blood came from an animal. It was reported in the local newspapers that the blood came from a sheep, and soon, locals believed that Marion had disappeared on his own accord for some reason. Potential sightings began to come in. One person saying there is a young man that looked like Marion, who was seen leaving town on a bus. It was later found out to not be Marion. Another tip said that Marion checked into a hotel room. This Marion Robb was also from Paragona, but this turned out to not be him. There were two Marion Robbs from Paragona, and it was the other Marion Robb who stayed at the hotel, not the missing boy. 7 years later, Marion's body was finally found a few miles outside where the search was conducted. The following details were not included in news articles, only the family account. His brother Clark would say that the skeleton had been found bound by wires and had been gagged, and a pair of size 30 jeans and burlap were discovered by Clark in the spot his body was found. Since his body was found, no one was ever arrested, and what happened to Marion, or who would have wanted to hurt him, still remains a mystery to this day. According to the family, a state trooper looked at the records on the case years later and told them that the blood was never confirmed to be not human, just that it came from a mammal, and authorities at the time declined further testing. Rumors began to circulate that Robb Clark knew what happened to his brother, but the family quickly dismissed the rumor. Clark had been questioned several times, and his story never changed. One theory was put forward that Marion witnessed the death of some sheep and was silenced, but likely we'll never know the true answer of what happened to Marion. Lauren Spierer was born on January 17, 1991. She grew up in Scarsdale, New York, an affluent town in lower Westchester County. She graduated from Edgemond High School in 2009. She met her boyfriend Jesse Wolf and her friend Jay Rosenbaum at Camp Towanda, a summer camp in Pennsylvania. It was there she also met many other future IU students, who later became Spierer's close circle of friends when they enrolled in 2009. At the end of the spring semester, Lauren had a couple of friends, including Wolf and Rosenbaum, over to watch the basketball game and drink some wine at her apartment. That evening, while Wolf was at her apartment, Spierer texted him that she was going to sleep after the game, but at some point, she decided to go to a party at Rosenbaum's townhouse 2 blocks away. She is seen on surveillance video leaving her apartment at about 12:30 a.m., looking happy and well. At the party, Lauren began to drink some more and is speculated to have consumed other drugs like cocaine. There, she also met Rosenbaum's neighbors, Corey Rossman and Michael Beth. After Rosenbaum's party, Lauren and Rossman went to a nearby sports bar called Kilroy's. She was only there about a half an hour, unfortunately leaving her cell phone and shoes there. From the bar, they made their way to Lauren's apartment complex. In the hallway, they saw a group of young men that allegedly were friends of Lauren's boyfriend, Jesse. One of them reportedly punched Rossman in the face, which he later claimed erased much of his memory that night. After the incident, surveillance footage indicates that they left Spierer's complex, showing Rossman carrying a clearly intoxicated Lauren over his shoulder. They got to Rossman's apartment, where his roommate, Michael Beth, said his intoxicated friend vomited and went to bed. Michael then claimed that Lauren went next door, back to Rosenbaum's place. Once she arrived there, Rosenbaum noticed a bruise under her eye, presumably sustained in a fall earlier that evening. She told him she didn't know how she got the bruise. According to Rosenbaum, he insisted that Lauren go to sleep on his couch, but she refused, saying she wasn't done partying yet, and left. Lauren then walked up the street towards her own apartment at 4:30 a.m. that morning, never to be seen again. If Rosenbaum's statement is true, this makes him the last known person to see Lauren Spierer. Lauren's parents believed that the group of friends that Lauren was hanging out with that night knew more than they were telling the police. 4 of the men that hung out with her that night got lured quickly. Corey Rossman, Jay Rosenbaum, Mike Beth, and Jesse Wolf are all still considered persons of interest in Lauren's disappearance, though not all suspects. Even though Jesse Wolf said he was at his home in the early hours of June 3rd, police can neither prove nor disprove his alibi. While all were cooperative with the investigation, some of their parents did not allow them to take police polygraphs. Instead, some took lawyer-appointed third-party polygraphs. Rosenbaum and Wolf claimed they passed the independent test, but the results have not been made public. Outside of theories that anyone Lauren was with that night harmed her, there's also the chance someone abducted her off the street. A 90-pound girl who was barefoot and intoxicated could have been snatched off the street very quickly. There was also sex offender Daniel Messo, the future murderer of fellow IU student Hannah Wilson, around the area at that time, but police later dismissed the case as not having any similarity to Lauren's. Another popular theory is that she had an accidental overdose. Taking large amounts of alcohol, as well as other drugs, on top of Laura's heart condition and/or medication may have caused her death. If she died while at someone else's apartment, panic may have set in, causing an inebriated college student to panic and hide her body. A tip received in 2016 seemed to have raised the possibility, but further investigations into the matter haven't produced any concrete evidence. Whatever occurred that night, no one that knows anything is telling, even after 10 years. Perhaps it was a terrible accident that happened, and we can deal with that, Lauren's mother Charlene said at a press conference. What we can't deal with is what we don't know.